Hello and welcome to Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi on YYC Business. Joining me today is Richard White, who is a blogger in Calgary, blogs about all things Calgary, known as the Everyday Tourist. Thanks for joining us today, Richard.
Thank you, Mario.
Well, we're having this discussion, Richard, as City Council and the city debates once again, revitalizing downtown Calgary. And the reason I say once again is because, man, I don't know. I moved to Calgary in 1980, and it seems to me that the topic of downtown revitalization has been something that has been talked about, discussed for 4 decades in this city, has it not?
Well, it actually goes back further than that. I mean, when you really go back and look, it's back to the 1960s when they built the new library, which was the W.R. Castell Library. And they built, at that time, the Bow Valley College. And they put the new school board building there. And that was the start of sort of a civic government district. And at the same time, they were also Palliser Square was built over top of then still a train station. The Palliser Square had an office tower, had retail, and had a tourist attraction, and of course also the Glenbow and the hotel was built. So we're still trying to do the same mixed use developments 50, 60 years later.
Mm-hmm. So what has been the issue in your perspective when you look at downtown Calgary, and why is it broken?
I'm not really sure that it is broken. I mean, I think planners and politicians want this robust downtown like they see in New York or Chicago or even Vancouver. But my experience is that you only have a robust, vibrant downtown when you have tourists. So when you go to a place like Vancouver, they have something like 20,000 hotel rooms. We have maybe 4,000, 5,000. And a lot of their hotel rooms are around leisure visitors. So they got nothing else to do but wander the streets during the day, hang out on a patio, go to the galleries or the museums, have a beer on a patio, like I say. Whereas our hotels are mostly business oriented. So these guys are no different than people who work downtown. They get up, they have breakfast, they go to the office at 8 o'clock, they go to work, until 4 or 5 o'clock. Maybe they go out for a beer, with some of their colleagues or for dinner. And then they're home, calling their kids and family, and that's it. So it's really, I mean, you go to New York, you go to Montreal, it's the tourists that make the downtown vibrant. Mm-hmm. So, most other cities in North America and even in Europe, if you don't have a ton of tourists in your downtown, you probably don't have a vibrant downtown.
Okay. Can you, first of all, for full disclosure, Richard, can you tell our audience here your connection with downtown Calgary over the years?
Well, I was the executive director of the Downtown Association from about 1995 to 2005. And I was on the board of the International Downtown Association for about 4 years of that. And I've certainly spent the last 35 years basically visiting cities around the world because I'm fascinated with what makes them tick.
Mm-hmm. So when everybody talks about the downtown office market, right? And let me just talk a little bit about a couple of these issues. One of the things that people talk about quite often is converting some of those empty spaces into residential. Is that a viable option for to help the downtown?
It's not, it won't help. It'll help the downtown. It's in a very small way. There's probably maybe 4 or 5, maybe even 6 buildings that potentially make sense. And again, I think one of the things they're discussing today is affordable housing. So it can make some sense if it's subsidized. But the reality is that most of our, I think something like 80% of our empty office space is actually in new buildings, owned by pension funds that have deep pockets. And they're going to, they're not going to convert those into residential spaces. We also have a very interesting downtown in that a lot of our office space has very big floor plates. That's what the oil patch wanted. They didn't want people having to go up and down stairs. So we don't have the tall, slender office buildings that lend themselves. Once you get over about 8,000 or 7,500 square feet floor plate, it becomes very difficult to have windows and get light into the middle. So I would say that yes, we will see some, and we have seen some. I mean, the cube in the Beltline is an example by Strategic. But, and I mean, the Barron building is being redone right now. So you will see a few of them, but it's not going to save downtown. When you've got 12 million square feet, we might get a million, million and a half, maybe 2 million of conversion.
Mhm. Now, I wanted to just return to what you're talking about in the tourism industry. Do you, obviously we're right now in different times because tourism is kind of shot because of the pandemic. But even when it comes back, like what needs to be done then to attract people to Calgary and specifically the downtown?
Well, and again, I've been on Tourism Calgary. I was board of director for 5 or 6 years. I was on the Tourism Destination Region Board for another 5 or 6 years. I'm not sure that Calgary can do anything to become a tourist city. We just don't have the population close by. Like, when I was in Nashville, there was tons of people on the weekend, but they have something like 50 million people that are within a 3-hour drive. So people on Wednesday or Thursday can just say, hey, let's go to Nashville for the weekend. And they hop in their car. They don't have to book a flight. Yes, they have to book a hotel room, but I mean, it's just a whole lot easier. And I
Yeah.
mean, you look at places that are tourist attractions, they have that rubber tire market, Vancouver, Seattle, Toronto, has the whole Niagara or the whole sort of golden horseshoe in Buffalo. Montreal's got, Ottawa, Quebec City, and all of northern New York. You need a density of people. And I mean, we only have Edmonton, and people don't go from Calgary to Edmonton or Edmonton because they're perceived as the same city. They don't have anything different to offer.
Yeah. Well, let me just ask you about locally and getting people downtown, from, Calgarians to spend time down there. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, what could we do to make the downtown more attractive for the people who live in this city?
Well, we've got to look for unique things, so, it's got to be unique shopping. So, I mean, the problem with the core is that, it's more or less perceived to be just like Chinook Mall or Market. Yes, you've got some high-end shops. You've got the Harry Rosen, you've got the Simon's department store, but for the most part, it is the same sort of chain stores. Yes, you've got some high-end restaurants, but the problem is that the suburbs now have high-end restaurants. They've got great patios. You don't need to come downtown other than maybe to go to the Glenbow Museum once or twice a year, maybe to go to Arts Commons for a performance once or twice a month, depending on how interested you are in culture. But really, the suburbs, have a lot of the things that the downtown used to offer. They've got the cinemas, they've got the recreation centers. I mean, you could argue, and I've written about it, that the whole concept of a downtown, is a early 20th century model that is no longer valid. People don't need to go downtown to go to the cinema. They don't need to go downtown to go to the bank, all of those things. So, one of the things that the city's trying to do, which is fair, is to say, okay, can downtown become a self-sufficient community? Can it have enough people that it kind of self-generates its own street life,
Mhm.
just like the Beltline does?
What from what you're saying, Richard, it seems to me like the city's tossing around talking about a $200 million investment in revitalizing downtown. It seems to me that that seems a lot of money to spend on something that I don't think is fixable in that sense, right?
Well, and I hate to say this. I hate to say that, we do need to continue to invest. But I know some politicians have said, well, we've abandoned downtown. But I've actually done a list. And when you actually look over the last 25 years of what has been, I mean, they built the West LRT. That's $1.8 billion. They redid all of the LRT stations along 7th Avenue. That was like $200 million. They've redone St. Patrick's Island. They've created a new park in Eau Claire. They've just about completed doing Century Gardens. They've extended the LRT. because one of the things they keep talking is downtown needs to be more accessible. They've built bike lanes.
Mhm.
Like we have invested, and now there's plans for $110 million development of Glenbow. There's, a 200 first phase, 200 second phase for Arts Commons. One of the biggest issues I think that we have done was we made a huge mistake in building the library and the National Music Center on the east side of the municipal building. That should have been part of the Olympic Plaza Art and Cultural District. But now what we're building is a second downtown on the east side of the municipal building. And, CMLC is looking at creating connections north and south, not east and west. And
Mhm.
so now, my concern is that in creating East Village, Victoria Park, Stampede Park as a arts and entertainment and social, will that in fact minimize or cannibalize what happens on Stephen Avenue and what happens there? Because can we support, especially without having the large tourist numbers, can we support two entertainment districts?
Mm, exactly, right, yeah. The other issue I want to ask you about was parking. What are your thoughts on the parking issue downtown? Does that prevent or cause a lot of people to just to stay away?
Well, I think it does. It probably shouldn't. Every survey that's done, there will be a significant number of people saying that parking is a barrier. And again, perception is reality. So even if you tell them, and I know when I was with the Downtown Association, we talked blue in our face that, there's 10,000 free parking stalls on Sunday, and there's, $2 on the weekend and $2 after 6 o'clock, but you can't get that message. I actually have a call into Calgary Parking Authority, which they haven't returned, and it's now almost 2 weeks, because this would be a perfect time to experiment with free parking. The Calgary Parking Authority could offer free parking after 4 o'clock every day and on the weekends and evenings in their lots and see what happens.
Yeah.
Like take that barrier away and say, all of our lots are free, first come, first serve, or, 4 hours free. And then after that, you pay $2 an hour or something like that. But I just don't see us experimenting enough. I know that they've been very good, and even the private ones at the $2 after 4 o'clock and weekends. But even that hasn't seemed to help. Is $2 really a barrier? Or is the barrier, because I think for lots of people, they love surface parking lots. They love to be able to see their parking spot. They love to be able to drive in and see it. The idea that you have to go around these circles and how do I get in there? And of course, and something that we should talk about is safety, because I think that's the biggest issue. I think that, and I think it's a very difficult, when you see stabbings on
Yeah.
downtown streets, and you see people that are homeless, and you see street people, and you see people that are high on drugs. It happens everywhere, but it happens in concentration in the downtown.
Yeah.
It happens specifically more in the downtown core, and it happens more at night. But, I really do think that one of the things that we need to deal with, and this is the bigger issue, and it's not necessarily a city issue, but really the issue is we need the provincial government and the federal government to provide affordable housing for everybody who needs it. People shouldn't, in Canada, people shouldn't be homeless. And that may be a shelter. That may be the type of housing on a transitional basis, not on a permanent basis. We also need to provide mental health programs. A lot of the issues for street people, homeless and drug, it's mental health. We need to be able to provide for those people who want help.
Yeah.
Obviously you can't force people, and then the third thing I think is that we need to really up our game when it comes to basically, for crime and the sentences that we give. I think that the drug dealers and the people who prey on a disadvantage, they need to be prosecuted at the full extent of the law and not get out and get back out and prey on other people. And I think we've become too lenient in our criminal code and how we apply it. And I think everybody's frustrated because they'll arrest somebody and they're back out on the street the next day.
Yeah. Yeah, and the key, as you said, is safety. You want to be, especially in the evening, you want to feel safe if you want to go downtown. And visit a bar or a restaurant,
But the reality is, I mean, when do people really need to go downtown anymore?
no.
You
No.
know, I mean, for the majority of people, I mean, I always sort of say that recreation is our culture. Calgary doesn't have, I mean, there are some people who are really into the arts, but for the most people, and I always tell this story about, I was having lunch with, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he was the producer, artistic director for ATP, Michael Dobbin. And he was telling me that, he had lunch with his chair of his board and said, "Oh, I'll see you tonight at the performance." Come evening, doesn't show up. Calls him next day. "Where were you?" "Oh, it was a nice night out. We decided to go for a bike ride." That's the Calgary, and you've got a bicycle path that's, close by. All the family can go, and so, am I going to drive back into the downtown? I just think that, we have to accept the fact that we are going to have, doesn't say we don't have a downtown, doesn't say we don't have these things, but I think we have to be realistic. We have to face the reality that we're not a tourist city. We're not a big arts and cultural city. Doesn't say we can't be, but, those are things that we think, when you build, these huge recreation centers for 250 million people, they're the town center. That's where people hang out on the weekend. We're not coming downtown to hang out at the Stephen Avenue and the Glenbow. We're hanging out at the art center. We're hanging out in the parks. I mean, Calgary, I mean, I always sort of say our brand should be the city of parks and pathways.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where people want to be. Whenever the weather's nice, people want to be in the parks or on the pathways. That's our culture.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're walking, to that point, if they're wandering around, say, especially now, say, looking for patios outside, or, they're walking around in Kensington or on 17th Avenue, right? They're not
That's right. Where you can get
Avenue.
lots of sunlight. And I mean, one of the things, and I think it's an unintended consequence, but by making the lovely river walk along the river, people who live downtown don't walk down Stephen Avenue, they walk along the river.
Yeah.
And so we've created this lovely riverscape, but it's at the detriment of Stephen Avenue. Like, who's going to walk up and down 8th Avenue when I can go a few blocks away and walk along the river? And so you go there on a day like today, or you go there on a nice weekend, there'll be 10,000 people on the river, and there'll be 1,000 people on Stephen Avenue.
Yeah.
And that's just the reality of it.
Yeah,
I mean, one of the things you asked me earlier, could we do, and this is my own pet project, or not pet project, but is animating the +15 system. The +15 system is unique. In the winter time, you could literally drive from your house, from your heated garage and your parking, or to a heated parkade, get in the +15 system, and if there were buskers playing music and the cafes were open and there was, public art and little pop-up galleries or whatever, it could be a lovely, place from November to April.
Yeah.
And it would be unique, and people could come downtown. And, and it would be, I mean, people complain about the +15 and it takes all the animation away, but they never say that about the underground of Montreal. They never say that about the underground path system in Toronto. They're all just as extensive as downtown Calgary.
Mm-hmm.
And really, I think the problem is that, and I mean, part of our problem is, but then so is it for these other cities, is that, a lot of the +15 is a quasi-public system because they have to walk through a private system. But there is a mechanism for the city if they wanted to. We have not had a true champion on council for the +15s. In fact, most councillors and most urban planners hate the +15 system. And I think that's a big mistake. I think the +15 should be the thing that becomes the downtown, the reason to go downtown, the reason to bring your visitors and family and friends downtown. Because there's this lovely pathway system that in the middle of the winter, we can wander and we can see art and we can have I mean, all of those food courts could become funky, food halls.
Sure. Yeah. All righty. Well, thanks a lot for your thoughts and insights on this, Richard.
Thank you, Mario. Anytime.
All right. That was Richard White, who is a blogger here in Calgary, known as the Everyday Tourist. This has been Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi on YYC Business. Thanks for joining us today.